When do adverse childhood experiences become childhood trauma? Let's take a look. The link between adverse childhood experiences and childhood trauma is not always obvious, and we're often asked about the difference between the two and when an adverse childhood experience becomes childhood trauma. To understand that, we first need to understand what an adverse childhood experience is and what childhood trauma is.
Adverse childhood experiences are stressful events that happen during childhood. The word adverse means that something prevents success or development or is harmful. This is a key distinction with adverse childhood experiences. For a stressful event to be classed as an adverse childhood experience, it needs to prevent success or development or be harmful. This distinction differentiates adverse childhood experiences from typical day-to-day stressful events that we all experience.
We all experience stressful things as part of our daily lives. This is a normal part of life in adulthood and in childhood. Things like being late for an appointment, not getting something we want, or falling out with friends. These experiences in childhood are actually really important in teaching us things like problem-solving skills or the ability to cope when things go really wrong. They're things we really need in childhood to develop.
These typical stresses are not adverse childhood experiences. Adverse childhood experiences are events that harm us or impair our ability to develop and be successful. In childhood, these types of experiences can have a significant impact. Children are still developing, and being able to develop and grow is a key factor to their success. Experiences like abuse, neglect, or other things that go on in the home, like domestic violence or substance misuse, can have an impact on a child's ability to develop. This in turn will have an impact on their ability to be successful, hence their adverse childhood experiences.
But when do these events become childhood trauma?
Childhood trauma is the response to frightening, distressing, or life-impacting events that happen during childhood. The important thing to note is that the trauma is the response or impact from events. When we consider childhood trauma alongside adverse childhood experiences, the trauma is what results from those adverse experiences. For example, a child could experience extreme fear while witnessing domestic violence. This fear and any worry or anxiety that happens during or after the event would be childhood trauma. The adverse childhood experience has become childhood trauma.
This is an example of a trauma response that's easily relatable to the event that caused it, but there are adverse childhood experiences that can lead to often unseen childhood trauma.
For example, a child who experiences neglect where they do not receive enough interaction and nurture from the adults around them may not develop as quickly as other children. They may not walk, talk, or learn to play as quickly as their peers as they've not had the experiences to help them do this. This is another form of childhood trauma where the impact is on the child's development. In terms of the childhood trauma definition, the impact is life-impacting rather than frightening or distressing. But remember, these experiences are often both life-impacting and frightening and distressing.
The definition of an adverse childhood experience says that the experience prevents development, success, or is harmful. Many adverse childhood experiences will cause childhood trauma, but when is it that they become childhood trauma?
When an experience results in a child being distressed or fearful for theirs or others' safety, or impacts them in some way to prevent or change the course of their development, this is childhood trauma.
If you want to know more about childhood trauma, check out our childhood trauma video series. I'll pop a link to it at the end of this video. But first, here's one final trauma-informed care top tip. Adverse childhood experiences and childhood trauma are so closely linked that if we're supporting a child who we know has had an adverse childhood experience or is still experiencing them, we should always be asking ourselves, what could the trauma impact be? If we're continually asking that question, we can prepare ourselves to provide trauma-informed care and provide the best care possible to all children who've had adverse childhood experiences. For more information on this, check out our childhood trauma guide, and remember to subscribe to Tribe for more trauma-informed care in practice.